Chris de Ploeg, co-founder of RLS, a anti-colonial network in Amsterdam, and investigative journalist and author. Big applause for Chris. Dear honorary judge, he would like to bring to justice the monarchy.
Okay, let's hear the complaint.
Dear judge and jury, I'm here to talk about Western royalty, about colonial royalty. From the Spanish Empire to the British, from the French Empire to the Dutch, nearly the entire world was colonized, enslaved, raped, pillaged and murdered in the name of the royal heads of state. We know that King Leopold pillaged the Congo as his own personal property, killing 10 million people in a brutal Holocaust. We know that the Spanish crown financed the voyage of Columbus, setting in motion the process of unimaginable genocides and ecocides, leading to the death of an estimated 175 million people. We know that the British royalty were the main shareholders of the Royal African Company, which has shipped more enslaved people than any other company in the world. When Queen Elizabeth died a few weeks ago and everybody paid their dues and their honor, she was still the largest legal landowner in the world, only a sixth of the planet's land surface. Dear judge, we are living in the colonial present.
Well, it sounds like.
But I am of course here to speak not only about royalty in the general. We are here in the heart of the Dutch Empire. I am here also to talk about Dutch royalty. And for the sake of time, allow me to focus just on 3 specific examples. I believe they will suffice to make my case. First, Johan Maurits Nassau, who became the governor of New Holland, a Dutch colony in northern Brazil and one of the major centers of transatlantic slavery after the genocide of the local indigenous peoples. Maurits Nassau became one of the richest peoples in the Netherlands as he traded in enslaved people and hunted down maroon communities in a complete reign of terror. The House of Orange Nassau was a major shareholder in the West Indian Company, which became, for a brief period in time, the single largest trader of enslaved people across the globe. The royal family as such was directly responsible for grave crimes against humanity. So let me move on to our first official king, Your Honor. I am talking about William I. Under the Dutch Constitution, the colonies were completely under his tyrannical foreign rule. William I was heavily involved in the brutal crushing of the Java Uprising, where his forces murdered 200,000 civilians. These brutal massacres laid the basis for the so-called culture system, forcing indigenous peasants to work their best lands for sugar and coffee, on which the Dutch trading company gained a complete monopoly. And who was the main shareholder of this company? It was William I. Getting rich as countless locals fell to deep poverty and even to famine and starvation. But William I was also a drug-pushing mobster. His Dutch trading company became one of the largest opium traders in the world as they drugged the local population who slaved away on the colonial plantations. Clearly, the royal family was directly responsible for some of the worst crimes of colonialism, including forced labor, forced starvation, civilian massacres, war crimes, and massive dealing in opioids. To finish off, Your Honor, with a more recent example, Prince Bernhard, who passed away in 2004, the grandfather of the current king. Before he married the Dutch Queen Juliana, he was a German citizen, member of the Nazi SS, the SA and the NSDAP. After World War II, Prince Bernhard still had the nerve to fraudulently steal $1 million guilders from a German fund for Holocaust victims. But Your Honor, there is much more. Prince Bernhard was one of the founders and the first president of the World Wildlife Foundation, which to this day tortures, murders, and forcefully deports indigenous peoples from their lands in the name of white conservationism, nature parks for tourists all across the world. And Bernhard himself was a hunter and a hypocrite. The 1,000 founding funders of the WWF are full of major apartheid figures, arms dealers, dictators, fascists, and oil barons. Prince Bernhard personally financed the first WWF death squad in South Africa, the KAS. According to insider testimonies, the KAS directly trained pro-apartheid militias in the Kruger National Park and killed an estimated 6,000 opponents of the apartheid regime. As such, Prince Bernhard sided with the crimes of apartheid and against the self-determinations of indigenous peoples. These are just 3 examples, My Honor, of the king, of the royal family, and there are of course many more. The royal family was a major shareholder, might actually still be, with all the secrecy involved, in countless Dutch companies that grew directly under colonialism, including Royal Dutch Shell, ABN AMRO, and Unilever, some of which we already found guilty in our last People's Tribunal. That is how the royal family became one of the richest of the world, with an estimated wealth of 12 billion euros. And still, they receive 350 million euros every year from the Dutch state through tax privileges and subsidies for the maintenance of their castles and their luxurious travels, like their trips to their vacation home in Waimapu on stolen indigenous Mapuche lands. Right now, as we speak, the king and queen claim they want to come clean with their past, but talk is cheap. Your Honor, I say, let them forsake their power and their stolen wealth. Give back your castles and your shares, those mountains of gold you have never worked for. Return all of it, every last penny, to the peoples that were colonized and murdered and enslaved. It is time for reparations. So step down from your throne, become a common man like all of us, because the royal house cannot be decolonized, it can only be abolished.
Well, this is a people's court, and I have been listening to all the words and all the very shocking facts that are being delivered here. Now it's up to you. What do you think? Is the royal family in any way guilty of anything?
Yeah!
Let's bring up something to smash. Get something smashed here.
All right, I just thank you, Judge, for the decision, and Chris the Ploeg for the complaint. So I will give those who wanted to destroy the monarchy 1 minute, so we catch up some time. And I heard that the stick was broken because of the immense emotion. So I want to ask the one who is going to kick with all the power you have. Go ahead. Slaan, schoppen. Yes. Yes. There you go. Go ahead, who wants to join? Wie wil er meedoen? Schop maar raak. Yes. All right, 30 seconds, go ahead.